in Gentium 16, which says the same thing.
Yeah, like...
Look, I'm not trying to be mean, but we're going to go to Pine Sap because he wants to talk. Pine Sap, you want to talk about epistemology? I'd like to.
Hey, Jay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, let's go, man. How's it going?
Good. You want to talk about epistemology?
Sure. I mean, I'm more of an ecclesiology guy, to be honest. I can try covering epistemology, though.
Yeah, I just think that if classical foundationalist Thomistic epistemology fails, then the whole Roman Catholic system fails.
Now, explain what necessarily your view of our view is.
Well, for example, John Paul II in Fides et Ratio defines natural theology as reasoning about God without and in no way referencing divine revelation. So this is what led the Roman Catholic Church to dogmatize the idea, particularly that what natural theology is precisely that, right? Reasoning about God without any reference to divine revelation. That seems to assume and presuppose that you're a foundationalist. I've never heard a Roman Catholic that's not a foundationalist. So that means that things like the peripatetic axiom, which Aquinas says he agrees with, or the idea in Aristotle that what is better known by us versus what is better known in itself from posterior analytics or prior analytics or physics, etc., that those are kind of self-evident axioms. That seems to me to be pretty uncontroversial or not even contentious in the Roman Catholic world.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I admittedly, I'll be fully honest with you. Like I said, I'm not much of a studier of epistemology. I kind of talk about its relation to ecclesiology a little bit, but I'm not too well versed yet with like what St. John Paul II or St. Thomas Aquinas wrote on that topic. I'm more about covering sort of the evidences for papal primacy or sort of how the early.
Fair enough, but I mean, you said evidences, like evidences would go along with evidentialism. So in other words, wouldn't this point kind of go more fundamental than arguing the ecclesiology?
I suppose it would. I tend to just sort of try and look at history and look at, can Catholic beliefs, right, can, say, Vatican I, for instance, be defended in the first century, the first century, but the first millennium. And, what evidences do we have from, say, the early church fathers, the early church writers, both Eastern and Western, that kind of support that view?
What do you think of the Chieti and Alexandria documents?
Well, I think those documents are not, magisterial pronouncements, but even if I grant that they are, I think they're meant to be more conciliatory, I'm trying to look for the word.
Yeah, I know what you mean, towards the east.
Written, right, yeah. Not meant really to be like an apologetical writing that sort of defends our position, but more so a document that is trying to sort of come to a meeting in the middle, if you will, in order to establish sort of a more ecumenical dialogue.
No, I think that is I think you're absolutely correct. That's what those documents are saying. I guess I'm just curious, like, even if they're not magisterial, like, they still have papal approval. And if they are essentially approved by the Vatican with being these official commissions, like if they're admitting things like Chieti does at the very bottom, that Rome didn't exercise universal primacy in the first millennium, like how is that not a denial of Vatican I?
Well, what I would say is I would go back to Father Silvestri Berry's The Church of Christ, where he talks about sort of the universal jurisdiction that the papacy has being a power that the Pope has always had, but not necessarily a power that always needs to be exercised.
So wouldn't that undercut the arguments that you guys make from Clement or from Honorius? Excuse me, not Honorius, from Celestine and others.
Not necessarily. The reason why I say that is because, the Pope really sort of, and I don't mean this in the way that Vatican I would anathematize, like, oh, he's just a supervisor or something like that, right? But in a manner of having this universal jurisdiction versus how he exercises it, the Pope doesn't need to be sort of an autocrat that takes away the role of the local bishop. Even remarked about by Blessed Pius IX around his papacy and around Vatican I, especially after the German bishops, this is in Dr. Ed Shinsky's work on the papacy, the German bishops sent him a document or a pronouncement about how Vatican I did not essentially create like what St. Gregory the Great would have, remarked as the universal bishop. This idea that like all bishops are not somehow like true successors of the apostles. They don't have their own sort of.
Yeah, I'm aware of what you're talking about, and I have the Szyszynski,
Right.
I have the Szyszynski book here with me. But what I'm getting at though is that you said that it need not be exercised. But the document actually says that the Roman bishop did not exercise canonical authority over the churches of the East. But you're saying that, well, my distinction there would be that it's a power, but it's not necessarily exercised. So wait a minute, was it exercised in the first millennium, or was it a power he had and he didn't exercise?
I think there might be some confusion over what I was saying. I was not saying that he didn't exercise it at all. I was just saying it's not a power that he needed to necessarily always exercise. Unless it was absolutely necessary to. Because the normal function of, say, a patriarch or a local bishop is that, of course, he'd be controlling his diocese, he'd be controlling his area of jurisdiction. But,
so this papally approved document is incorrect?
Well, I mean, I'd have to see the specific passage that
it's on the screen right here. You haven't read Chieti?
I mean, I've glanced over it. I'm not.
I mean, this is a famous passage that multiple, even PhD Roman Catholics at the time when it came out, admitted that this really undoes Vatican I.
I highly doubt that, and I think quite a bit of people have actually written quite the opposite.
Oh, okay.
I mean, like I said.
So okay, but here's the thing about it, right, and that's fair. That's fair. That's fair. No, I understand that, but whether this document is apologetic or ecumenist in its motivation really says nothing about whether or not it's an error that's pretty significant if this is a paperly approved commission. But the reason I always go to epistemology at this point in the discussion is that you said, well, it's not really a magisterial document. I don't really have to put that into the tier or the bins of necessary conscience binding documents or whatever. How, as a Roman Catholic, do you sort out between all the different documents, papal teachings, and so forth? How do you know that you're putting them in the right bins if you've got extraordinary magisterium, universal ordinary magisterium, and ordinary teaching? How, as an individual Roman Catholic, do you know that you're actually interpreting this mass of documents correctly?
Well, I know that I'm interpreting them correctly based on the authority that they're issued with. I mean, Dr. John Joy writes pretty extensively about when certain
so hold on, wait a minute. So is Dr. John Joy infallible?
Didn't say that he was.
Okay, so you're going to get the criterion, you're going to a fallible source.
I don't think it's a fallible source necessarily.
Well, Dr. Joy is now infallible. Dr. Joy is infallible.
Of understanding.
Is Dr. Joy infallible? Is this book infallible?
I never said that it was, my friend.
Oh, so he's not an infallible source. So the very criteria is derived from a non-infallible source?
I mean, the argument that you're trying to make is essentially if I'm using any book to sort of have an understanding of...
No, it's actually an epistemic argument.
Or what have you, contradicts the view of the church.
No,
but then I can
it's not. I'm not arguing it contradicts the church. No, I'm arguing that you don't have a consistent epistemic principle to know clearly and from which source you're deriving the dogmas and putting them in the right bins. Because you have a giant mass of tens of thousands of pages potentially, right, that would count as part of, quote, Catholic teaching. And so you're saying that, well, I go to Dr. Bill Joy or whatever his name is to pull out these principles, but his book is fallible. So wait a minute. So where's the infallible list of the infallible dogmas?
The infallible list of the infallible dogmas, again, comes from the level at which these documents...
Oh, so there's not a list. So there's not a list. There's not a list?
All Dr.
So there's not a list?
says is here are the signs.
Yeah, so you have three criteria, and then you're like a Protestant. Yeah, you have three criteria from a fallible book, and then you're like a Protestant going through tens of thousands of pages to put it in the right bin.
Bad argument, my friend. He's
not a bad argument. It's a devastating argument to your position because you don't know epistemology.
He's drawing it from documents like Donum Veritatis.
It doesn't matter. So how do you know that he drew them from the right documents? That's begging the question. That's circular. You admitted he's fallible.
What you're trying to argue suddenly is that I, as a Catholic, have to turn off my brain.
No,
when I understand
you don't have a consistent epistemology. No, the argument is that you don't have a consistent epistemology, and you just proved it.
What are you even saying right now?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. So you see how he got mad once he got cornered?
Oh yeah, I'm the mad one.
Yeah, you said, "What am I even saying, bad guy?" And now you're going to the personal attacks.
Personal attacks, big dog. You just keep interrupting and stuff like
no,
that.
you're not. You're not answering the question because you got caught in a basic circular fallacy about your epistemology.
All I said is that Dr. John Joy references.
Is his book infallible?
These documents talk
Is
about.
his book infallible? Is it an infallible source? You went to a fallible source.
That's not even what I'm saying, Mike.
It is what you're saying. It's what I'm saying because you admitted the book is fallible. You admitted the book is fallible. You admitted the book is fallible, so you're just begging the question.
So let me guess. If I read Irenaeus, if I read Cyprian in another...
It doesn't matter because you don't have a coherent epistemology.
That doesn't make it a part of our faith.
It doesn't matter. You don't have a coherent epistemology is the point.
Okay, you're just kind of screaming to the void at this point.
Yeah, I'm screaming in the void.
About it?
You went. Do you want me to explain it to you for the fourth time? Do you want me to explain it for the fourth time to you?
Science book. That's a fallible book, but it can say something true.
Yeah, that's begging the question because it's a you don't know that you have the right things in the book that are infallible. That's the point.
But here's the thing: even if I was to make an error as a Catholic, it would not be a damnable error because that.
You don't even know that. Maybe it is. Right? That's begging the question. You're just assuming that. What's your because you don't have an epistemic criteria. You don't have an epistemic criteria that's consistent. You don't have an epistemic criteria that's consistent. That's the point. Here he goes. Here he goes to the personal attacks. Look at this. You were barely a Catholic. You were barely a Catholic. Basic attacks when he melts.
Man, dude. You were just like an angry little man.
Yeah, I'm an angry little man. He got cornered. Everybody saw his dumb circular argument. And then he immediately goes to the personal attacks. Did I say anything about him personally? I kept calling him back to the basic point. And he starts calling me an angry little man. No, you guys are scumbags. Straight up. Dishonest cults. You're dishonest cult members.